going to say a couple of things that I think it's been mentioned. When you're 4 years in, I was thinking, how long did the Second World War go on for? I thought, I've got to be due the end soon. What was 5 years? I thought, okay, got to nearly be there. But it just seems to keep going on. And I get that sense sometimes. I'm a teacher, so people I work with are very indoctrinated in general, and which isn't the way it should be. Teachers should be critical thinkers. Teachers should be able to be challenging narratives, but unfortunately, as I'm sure you've gathered, teachers are very they're people who tend to follow the establishment, and that goes way back. Well, this is the problem, is teachers are encouraged to look at official documents handed down from central government or local authorities, and there's a term called best practice, which means how well can you comply with what you're given in how you teach something, what you teach something. And now, of course, we've got diversity, equity, and inclusion. And unfortunately, this is permeated not just into teachers, but into children, independent of what we're teaching them. I had an argument yesterday with some 11-year-olds because I was teaching the Second World War, and I said, well, the women worked in the factories and the men worked in the army. And I had these 11-year-olds arguing with me, saying, well, that's wrong. Well, it shouldn't be like that. And I said, well, you can disagree with that, but you have to understand history in order to learn from it. And many children, independent of what I'm telling them, their own parents are indoctrinating them to such an extent that I can't communicate with them anymore. And I saw this happening. The worst example was in the lockdown. We had something called bubbles. Do you remember bubbles? Well, in my school, each class was in a bubble, which meant we couldn't let them interact with each other. So if you had a friend who was in a different year group, you wouldn't have any contact with them. Of course, before school, they'd all be hanging around outside the gate. But the minute they entered school, no, you're in a separate bubble. And then you'd see them going home together again. But whilst in school, we had to separate them for the good of I don't know what. And there were moments where you'd see a child getting told off, get back in your bubble! Or there was a cloakroom, and we had to make sure that year 2 weren't in there at the same time as year 3. And you could see a real sense of fear going into 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds for nothing. And there's never been any acknowledgement in the borough I work in. I have a better boss than most, but I can tell you that in Islington, where I work, the council actually wanted more lockdowns. They said the government aren't going far enough. We want to shut down schools earlier. And those children, unfortunately, many of them no one will ever apologise to them. No one will ever acknowledge that we robbed them of their childhood. And as we all know, when Disease X comes around with whatever, 20 times more than 0. But this is why I think it's important. If you're going outreach and you talk to someone, you talk to a family, look at you like that, or whatever, you throw a little shade of light into a very dark mind. And you never know where that's going to go. I have conversations with children, I just say little things, I say, well, what about this? Have you considered this? But what about from this perspective? And I hope that will germinate into something. And exactly, planting seeds. And when the next lockdown comes, and we know it will be harder again, and my hope is that there'll be enough seeds planted that we'll see all of us here times 20, and that time we'll win. So keep going, everyone.